The main character of Euphoria dies 35 minutes into the finale, and then the show looks at her dead body and cuts to a cowboy shoot in a strip club. I wish I was making that up. Rue Bennett, the recovering addict we followed for 2 seasons, the role that won Zendaya the youngest acting Emmy in history, overdoses on fentanyl pills a third of the way through with a 93-minute episode. The remaining hour belongs to a man in a military uniform walking into a strip joint to have a Clint Eastwood standoff. Her death gets one dream sequence and a couple of reaction shots. The shootout gets a full Western score in slow motion. So let me tell you how Sam Levinson took the most important character of the last decade and threw her in a ditch to make room for Alamo Brown. I kept waiting for the show to come back to her, to let one person who knew her actually fall apart on screen. Instead, her mom processes the death through a phone call. Jules processes it by painting a picture, and the guy with the most screen time in the back half of this finale is a strip club bishop on a revenge quest. Rue Bennett got upstaged at her funeral by a snake subplot. I rewatched the first 2 seasons just for this. Someone owes me money. Showrunner Sam Levinson didn't fail to give Rue an ending. He chose not to. He had the best character on television and treated her like a chess piece to clear off the board before the 3rd act. Before I take a hammer to this, I need you to understand that Rue was real. Not real, but real in a way only the best fictional characters get to be. Go back to that season 1 special, The Diner. Rue and Allie in a booth for an entire hour talking about addiction and shame and forgiveness. No plot, no purple lighting trick, just 2 people and a script that understood relapse better than almost anything on TV. People in recovery wrote that, and it was the first time they'd seen their own brain put on screen. Then there's the panic attack in season 2, where Rue tears the house apart looking for drugs and screams at her mother while she's in withdrawal. Zendaya won an Emmy off that, and the single most specific thing the show ever did was a flashback of a 7-year-old Rue on the floor saying, "I'm just exhausted." One line. It represented an entire generation's depression. For 2 seasons, Rue narrated everybody else's secrets because she was the one paying attention from the sidelines of her own life. She wasn't a character in the show. She was the lens the show looked through, which is exactly why what came next feels like a fumble and more like a man backing over his own dog. Season 3 opens with Rue seesawing a car over a wall because she's now a drug mule for Alamo Brown. That's where we start. From the inside of an addict's skull to a logistics puzzle. The girl who narrated everyone's interior life is siloed off into a gang storyline with characters we have zero history with, doing tasks that require no specific version of her to complete. Move the pills, deliver the drugs, run the errand. Swap Rue out for any warm body, and most of this plot survives untouched. That's the tell. Your main character is supposed to be load-bearing. Rue became set dressing in her own series. This is like if the final season of The Sopranos opened with Tony working the register at a sunglass hut, and we just never went back inside his head. The whole show was inside his head. That was the building. You don't gut the building and keep selling tickets to the address. Look at how Breaking Bad handles its lead when it's drowning in plot. Walter White is buried in cars and money, and Hank and Gus too, but every single plot beat is a pressure test on who he is. The plot exists to crack the character open. In Euphoria Season 3, the plot exists to give Zendaya somewhere to physically stand. The gang war reveals nothing about Rue. It just keeps her occupied. You can have Walt cooking meth, and that means everything. You can have Rue running drugs, and that means nothing, apparently. And Zendaya is in every one of those scenes acting her face off inside a story that does not need her specifically. The one good idea they handed Rue this season was that she turned toward God, and it could have been the spine of the whole thing. There's a real reading here. Addicts reach for faith because Christianity offers total forgiveness no matter what you've done, and Rue feels she's done so much damage that nothing short of cosmic mercy could touch it. She carries a Bible. She leaves it at Lexi's house. She fantasizes about a simple farmer life, which is a yearning for purity from someone convinced she's poisoned everything she's touched. Great concept. So naturally, the show buries it under cowboy hats, a twangy guitar score, and Lexi delivering the TED Talk about the Bible while the actual main character is decomposing off screen. The cruelest part is we never see Rue have the conversation. No scene of her wrestling with faith alongside Allie, or her mom, or Jules. Lexi explains Rue's spiritual life to us secondhand, which means the show is taking the one character defined by articulating her own pain and handed her narration to somebody else. It's the exact opposite of the Diner episode. The Leftovers did faith and grief and earned every second of it because because characters reached for God only after the writers had already shattered them down to the studs. The reach felt desperate and human, and it changed how they treated everyone around them. Euphoria reaches for God the way a kid reaches for a Halloween costume. It looks the part. There's nothing under the sheet. Faith only works on screen if it costs the character something, and Rue's faith cost her nothing because Levinson was too busy building a strip club set to sit in a room with her and her guilt. If you're realizing this show wasted something you cared about, hit subscribe because this channel is just me slandering the stuff we all wanted to be good. Now, let's talk about the relationship that built this show and then got quietly euthanized. HBO marketed season 1 as the Rue and Jules love story, and they weren't lying. That relationship was the heartbeat of season 1 and the direct fuel for Rue's relapse in season 2. Losing Jules is what sent her in that withdrawal spiral we all watched through our fingers. You'd think the final season would treat that bond like it mattered. Instead, Jules gets shoved into a sugar baby subplot in what looks like a green screen apartment, and Rue drops in occasionally to irritate her, sleep with her once, and at one point gets slapped completely out of nowhere. The slap lands with no build-up, and the show never circles back. No sit-down, no fallout, just a hand across the face that evaporates from the script. There is exactly one scene this season where they find the old frequency, where Jules sabotages a potential future to protect the fantasy her sugar daddy gives her, and it's good. It proves the writer could still do it. They just chose to do it once and walk away. And then Rue dies, and we don't watch Jules find out. No breakdown. No line of dialogue about the girl she loved. We cut to her painting. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the great love story at the center of this show is resolved as follows. The surviving partner learns her ex-girlfriend is dead, and her response, in full, is to make a piece of art. No words, one canvas. The defense rests. The Last of Us handles loss between two people who built a story together by refusing to look away from the survivor until it physically hurts to keep watching. That's how you make a death weigh something. You force the audience to sit in a room with the grief. Euphoria hands Jules a paintbrush and cuts to a gun, because in seasons 1 and 2, Rue getting clean and relapsing had a name and face attached to it. The stakes were Jules, Gia, her mom, Allie. Strip those relationships of any weight, and Rue's death has nothing to land on. If Rue and Jules were the foundation, season 3 took a sledgehammer to the basement and seemed confused about why the house felt hollow. Now the death itself, because the mechanics give the whole game away. Alamo, convinced Rue is a snitch, hands her fentanyl pills and tells her they're for pain. She takes them at Allie's place and overdoses. Her final conscious moment is a dream where she imagines Fesco free and goes to reunite with him. Allie finds her body on the sofa the next morning. I'll give Levinson this. The dream sequence is gorgeous. Marcel Rev shot the hell out of it. Soft light, the impossible reunion, a quiet tribute to Angus Cloud, and it aches in a way the rest of the season forgot how to. It's the only moment that feels like the old show, which is probably exactly why it's not allowed to last more than a few seconds, because the instant she flatlines, the show forgets she existed. Watch the reactions. Allie carries nearly all the visible grief alone. Her mother is a phone call. Her sister, who watched Rue tear the family to pieces, barely registers. The farmer family she met one time grieves harder and more consistently than her own blood. When background extras are out mourning your protagonist's actual mother, your finale has a math problem. Levinson's defense in interviews is that it's about consequences, the tragic result of addiction catching up. Fine, but if it's really about consequences, why does the camera flee the people who loved her and sprint toward a revenge plot? Consequences are supposed to be emotional. He gave us body count and called it a theme. Walter White's death in Breaking Bad arrives in the final minutes, after the show has systematically closed every loop he ever opened. Skyler, Walter Jr., Jesse, the whole rotten empire, carrying the weight of 50 hours behind it. Rue dies a third of the way into her finale so the show can pivot to people we met this season. One death is the destination the entire series was driving toward. The other is a speed bump on the road to a shootout. Killing a character is not the same as ending her story. Rue's real questions: can she live with herself? Can she forgive herself? Does she even want to be here, or left dangling? The show didn't answer them. It stopped asking and changed the channel. After Rue dies, Allie puts on his military uniform and goes after Alamo, and the back half of the episode belongs to the strip club standoff. Bishop betrays Alamo, Allie shoots him, and the whole thing exists to clear Maddie's debt. A subplot introduced this same season. Rue Bennett's corpse is the inciting incident for a strip club bookkeeping problem. The protagonist of the show dies so that a side character can settle a tab, and the new villain is better developed than the dead hero's send-off. Alamo's cold open backstory, the childhood, the con, the pimp training, based on Iceberg Slim's memoirs, is the best told story of the season. Levinson clearly fell in love with it. Congratulations to Sam Levinson for the boldest swing of the decade, spending more screen time on the antagonist's childhood flashback than on the death of the show's entire reason to exist. The state would like to enter that into evidence? No further questions. Coleman Domingo is handed the most thankless job on television, asked to carry both a sponsor's grief and an action hero's revenge in the same hour, and the show keeps choosing the revenge. The Wire knew how to end an addict's story, giving Bubbles that quiet walk upstairs to dinner with his family because it understood the scale of the ending should match the scale of the character. Euphoria flips that exactly backwards. Small emotional fallout, enormous guns. Allie's arc isn't even bad on its own. It's just not the show. You don't end a character study with somebody else's spaghetti western. This wasn't an accident of scheduling or bad luck. It's a pattern you can trace through Levinson's career. The Idol reportedly started as a critique of exploitation in the music industry and got rewritten and reshot into a lurid thing it was supposed to be tearing apart. Same instinct every time. Hollow out the human story, crank the shock and the style. Then count the people who built Euphoria's soul and left. Petra Collins helped set the visual identity and later criticized how her aesthetics got used. Labyrinth's music, which carried so much of the emotional weight, is noticeably pulled back in Season 3. Barbie Ferreira walked over reported clashes about her arc. Every collaborator who grounded the show exited, and the one person left in the room was the guy who liked cowboys. This is the same man who wrote that diner episode, The Hour with Allie, the single best thing this show ever did. 2 people in a booth, no plot. Total devastation. He knew exactly who Rue was. He proved it on camera. So Season 3 isn't the work of a writer who ran out of ability. It's the work of a writer who ran out of interest. His own press gives it away, because the framing around these deaths are always about shock value and discourse and trending. He built a death for the algorithm instead of for the girl. I rewatched that diner scene for this video and started crying in my kitchen, which is humiliating because I was supposed to be in hater mode. That's the actual tragedy. The talent is right there. He just spent it on snakes and shootouts instead of the person he built the entire thing around. Same magic trick as the Idol. Same empty hat. Sam, I need to talk to you directly, like you're sitting across from me. You had Rue Bennett, the youngest woman to ever win an Emmy for that role, played her. You wrote her so well that a whole generation of people in recovery saw themselves in a TV character for maybe the first time in their lives. That wasn't luck. That was you, on your best day, in a diner booth, understanding exactly what it feels like to be tired in a way sleep can't fix. And when it came time to let her go, you killed her 35 minutes into her own finale and gave the rest of her send-off to a man in a cowboy hat clearing a stripper's debt. You'll call it a story about America and faith and the deadliest sins. It wasn't any of that. It was a man who fell out of love with the best character and didn't have the honesty to say so. So he killed her quietly in the first act and went off to make the Western he actually wanted to film. Rue deserved an ending. You gave her an exit so you could change the channel. If anyone remembers Euphoria in 30 years, it'll be for Season 1. For that diner. For that 7-year-old girl on the floor saying she's exhausted. Not for this. The only thing Season 3 proved is that you knew exactly who Rue Bennett was. And somehow along the way, you decided she wasn't worth your time. She was the whole show, Sam. You're the only one who forgot.